Hello. In this video, we're going to go ahead and look at some relations and determine if they're functions. Then we're also going to talk about the domains and ranges. So we're going to kind of look at these in two different ways. The first couple will be in the form of, basically, these are just relations. So a relation is just a set of coordinates. That's all they are. So set, that's what these curly brackets represent, and then inside the curly brackets, each of these is a coordinate on the XY coordinate grid. So our question is each one of these a function? They are both relations. The question is, are they functions? Well, looking at the first one, to determine if it's a function, let's label that as green here, we're going to look at the x values. So the x values are -12, -10, and 8. Do any of those repeat? No, they don't. Because none of those repeat, that means that this is in fact, yes, a function. So yes, it is a function. Excellent. Next, let's look at letter B here. We'll come back to the domain and range for A. For letter B, we have -1, pi, 8, and 0. -1, pi, 8, 0. Do any of those repeat? No, they don't. Since none of those repeat, then the answer is yes, it is a function. Excellent. So, because they're both functions, we're going to look, well, not because they're both functions. They're both functions, and now we're going to look at the domain and range. The domain I'm going to kind of label as blue. But blue, or the domain here, is pretty much the exact same thing though. We're going to look at the x values again. So -12, -10, and 8. So the answer for the domain is that it is going to be the set of coordinates, or not the set of coordinates, just the set of numbers of -12, -10, and 8. And that's what the domain is. Now, technically, in my math lab, it's going to have a square inside of the curly brackets, so you don't need to write down the curly brackets. Please don't do that. That would be wrong, because you'd have the set of a set, and that's a little bit different from what you would have here. So that's the domain for the first one. Let's look at the domain for the second one. Again, the same thing is happening here. So the domain for this one is going to be, again, the set. And then write down the x values, preferably in numerical order. So that's going to give us -1, 0, pi, and 8. By the way, if you don't write it in numerical order, it's not wrong. It's just harder to see. So there we go. Those are the domains. The next thing we're going to look for is the range. And the range always comes from the y values. So for the first one, the y values are -1, 3, and 13. So the range for letter A here is going to be -1, 3, and 13. Excellent, not bad at all, right? For the second one, for letter B here, we're going to go ahead and look at this as 5, 5, -7, and 0. Notice that there are two 5s here. That's fine. There is no problem with the y repeating. It's just that you don't want to write it down twice. In fact, it's wrong if you do write it down twice. So just be careful with that. So the range in this case, the lowest y value that I see is is -7. So it's going to give me -7, comma. The next one is 0. And the next one after that is 5. Excellent. So there you go. They're both functions, and these are the domains and ranges for each one of them. For letters C and D, we're going to do the same thing. Again, we're starting out with whether it's a function, and to determine if it's a function or not, we look at the x values. These are a little bit different from what we saw, though. These are listing x values and y values, but you see arrows going between the two. So this is the head, this is the tail. Wait, tail? Yeah, this is the tail, this is the head. Yes. tail and head of the arrow. Basically, the arrow is pointing this way. And so if you have an x value here, what you would see is the set of coordinates this would represent would be 2, 4. Then you would have 5, 1, 7, 6, and 9, 10. Notice that you can always do this right here if you want to go back to what we did up here, but there's really no reason to. It's actually very easy to do without writing all this down. I just wanted you to see that that's what's happening here. Alrighty. So in this case, what we want to do is we want to look at the x values to determine if it is a function or not. Notice that none of the arrows, or none of the x's have more than one arrow coming from it. So that means that each x value corresponds only to one y value. And that is the very definition of a function. So yes, this one is a function. For letter D, however, if we look at this, notice that x's, or this 2 is corresponding to both the 0 and the 4 at the same time. There's 2 different arrows coming out of the 2. Therefore, this one is no, it is not a function. There we go. So that's how you can tell if it is a function or not using this form of expression. In this case, we now want to look at the domain and range. So for the domain comes from the actual x values themselves. So the domain is going to be the set 2, 5, 7, 9. That's for letter C. For the letter D, however, the domain is 2, 15, and -7. So putting that in numerical order is -7, 2, and 15. And then again, for the range comes from the y values. So for letter C here, we have 1, 4, 6, and 10. So the range here is going to be the set 1, 4, 6, and 10. And the range for the second set of bubbles here is 0, 4, 1, and 10, which means that we need to put this in numerical order as well, making that 0, 1, 4, and 10. Alrighty. Well, I believe that is it for this particular video. I will see you in the next one. Have fun.